there's plenty of people who are not doing it right, that if you, take that premium experience and capitalize on it and really create a memorable vacation for people, like they're going to keep coming back and the market is going to be there, whether they're, you would look at them as quote competitive assets or not. There's plenty to go around.
Hi, I'm Wyatt. And I'm Grace. And you're listening to Our Dad and your host of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Sean Moore, and we're back with our Experts Corner interviews with successful short-term rental investors willing to have a conversation, let you all listen in to the pros, the cons, the ups, the downs, and everything in between of short-term rental investing. And so today, we've got Mr. Joel Martin joining us, one of our Vodyssey Empire Club members. Joel, I appreciate you jumping on with us and allowing us to have this conversation with everybody listening.
Absolutely, Sean. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Excited for these conversations. I always love these conversations, a way for me to get caught up on a lot of things that you guys are doing. And so, but I always like to start rather than dive right into what's going on today, because we're going to get there. I always love hearing the backstory. I love hearing what paid the bills, where you're from, what does family life look like? What got you interested in vacation home investing, real estate investing? And so let's kind of rewind the clock a little bit and then walk our way into where we're at today.
Yeah, sure. These are some of my favorite episodes to listen to as well. So excited to share a little bit of the journey myself. We got started in this with Vodyssey. I think we 2022. So just coming out of COVID. Really heard about the program from a cousin of mine who's also a Vodyssey member, and was telling me some of the exciting things that he was doing and learning about, and just kind of had that entrepreneurial mindset of let's try something new that we can get excited about. And I think it went back to kind of my family makeup a little bit. I have four boys, currently age 7 to 14. So we're on the road quite a bit. We're a hockey family, as you'll see maybe throughout some of our discussion today, that drives a big part of our lifestyle. And so we were looking for something to be able to get away and go enjoy either nearby or just travel around to different locations around the U.S. And I think right around that same time frame, coming out of COVID, we were looking for something to encourage the boys and be excited about. And so my wife and I kind of committed to them to do our best to get them to all 50 states before the time they got out of the house from high school. And so we're well on that journey, but we thought, hey, it'd be great to own some of those that we're in going along the way as well. So, before that, I think just my career background, I still currently work in the commercial space in oil and gas. And so this is a part-time hustle for me, but I do some commercial engineering, field services, support type things around the globe, which has also given me a great chance to travel and see the world, which I think is, kind of lit a spark for me in some of these travel things as well. Before that, I was in the military, retired Air Force vet. And so getting to travel some with that has been a great experience too. And I think it was kind of a natural progression when I retired to look at some of these other kind of entrepreneurial type options as well to keep me excited. So
Awesome. Well, first, thanks for your service. I have such respect, admiration, appreciation for all of our service members. And so we have a pretty good contingency of military members in our Vodyssey group, don't we? And so it's a lot of fun, but I appreciate you sharing that, the background. I don't know if it's just for where I'm at here in Utah, but we have a couple friends who are hockey families, and Utah's not like a hockey hub. I would never call it that by any stretch, but I don't know that I know of any other sport that travels more than the hockey crew, at least the crew that I know. They're on the road all the time. And it's like, we grew up playing just the regular basketball, football stuff. And usually you're just kind of in your neighborhood, in your backyard, in the community. And it is, those hockey crews, they put some miles on.
Yeah, it's spread out. I think our Honda Odyssey gets about 35,000 miles a year, just going all over the place to different rinks. And with all four of them playing on different teams and different ages, it's quite a haul. So
nice. So, you've traveled around with work, with the family, with all the things you're doing, interested in saying, hey, listen, might be interested in this game of owning a few of these properties. What when you when did the decision point come where we're like, we're actually going to do something? Because a lot of people think about it. A lot of people are, have thought about owning vacation homes, owning investment real estate, buying something, but a lot of people just don't take that next step. And so was there any sort of a tipping point, or were you just like, hey, listen, we're gonna quit talking about it, we're gonna do it?
Yeah, to be honest, Sean, I think we had been doing the standard kind of 401k investing and Roth IRA and company contributions and all that kind of stuff. I was just looking for something a little bit more exciting to use some of those resources on.
Yeah.
And then, you talk about this often, but we took a couple trips and stayed in some Airbnbs, and you just always wonder, like, man, this can't be that hard, right? Some of these people are doing it. And if I'm paying this much, then there's got to be some opportunity here
Yeah.
to get into it. And I think that kind of just prompted me to just start asking the next question and taking the next step. Certainly there was some financial from my military service, and having a retirement income coming in from that was somewhat unexpected. I was able to retire a little bit early, and so we just thought about how do we be good stewards with this for our family and our future, and add some excitement to some things to do from a travel perspective, and maybe teach the kids some business lessons along the way that they can be involved with, and make it a family business as well. So, yeah.
Love it. So how, when you like, so we're going to dive in, we start looking at some of the resources, maybe some things that we can do to kind of follow a process. What are we like when we started to dive in? Did you already have a specific area in mind? Sounds like you guys put a lot of miles on and visit a lot of different areas. Like, did you have an idea of where you wanted to invest right out of the gate, or was it more of, hey, listen, we're going to start to analyze and kind of figure out where we want to go?
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, we're in the Ohio market. I live in Northeast Ohio, and so I think we went through a lot of when we found Vodyssey. You've got a great set of like tools to help you understand kind of the why and what's most important to you and things like that. And so we were kind of that type of investor where we wanted it to be income producing and wanted it to be a valuable investment, but also wanted to be able to get some use out of it. And we knew, even though we are traveling a lot, we knew with a busy hockey schedule, it probably needed to be something that was drivable. So we started, certainly we thought, hey, it'd be cool to go in the mountains somewhere, or on the beach or something like that. But I think we started looking at where's the drivable locations. And for us in Northeast Ohio, the closest kind of vacation market that's drivable, it's really a kind of a hidden gem. I think a lot of your listeners probably know about it, is the Hocking Hills market in South Central Ohio. And so that's about 3 hours from home for us. And I think it felt like as we got into it, it wasn't going to take me being away a lot to try and get it set up, to go look at houses. My wife and I were able to go down there quite a few times on the weekends and just look for things when we were in acquisition mode. And then even on setup too, it was definitely some late nights and weekends and things like that, but it wasn't flying across the country to try and set things up and manage that remotely. So that was helpful as well.
Yeah, love it. And it is a really nice little market there. It's kind of one of what I always consider and called and I don't know if it's not necessarily that it's a sleepy little market, but I always call them these backyard resort communities. Like these, they're very regionally known. A lot of people aren't flying on airplanes to get to them. They're going to be driving from the major metro areas that are 2 to 4 hours away. And there's those pockets of opportunity in a lot of those backyard resort communities across the country. Hocking Hills happens to be one of them, in my opinion. We've got a number of our Vodyssey members doing really well there, you guys included. And so you kind of had that as a target from the beginning. You also mentioned something that one of the things I love about vacation home investing is I've been investing in real estate now. God, I'm going on this is my 26th year going into it. That's the only thing that's ever paid my bills for 26 years. I can't believe it's been that long, but I've been around a number of different asset classes. I bought a lot of different asset classes, especially in the first decade of my career. And until we got into vacation home investing, Teresa was never even that involved or that interested. It was a means to an end, right? The first part of my career, I didn't have kids, but I've never seen an asset class that families get involved in together, and especially kids. And I love the aspect that kids get interested in it because they can learn different lessons that are not necessarily taught in schools. And so I love that you brought that up. did the boys and like the family, did they get involved? Did the kids were they interested in it from the very beginning? I'm curious on that. I always love to hear kind of the evolution of how the younger generation, the kids, get interested in this stuff. And it just seems to be a natural interest.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's obviously been at different levels and different capacities based on their
Yeah.
ages.
Yes.
They all love, our property down in Hocking Hills is like 11 acres, so it's got some wooded trails, it's got a fishing pond and things like that. And so they've all loved kind of just being down there and exploring the place and fishing and shooting BB guns and stuff like that. But there's definitely been some insights to where they've asked really good, thought-provoking questions around, Dad, why don't we do this, or this would be fun if we had something like that. And
Yeah.
most often those things, you talk about this a lot, being part of your target market. That's helped
Yeah.
us tremendously. We wanted to get a cabin that our family could use and family groups could use. And so like being part of that target market, it really helped us to design that experience. And, the kids were the big part of that to make sure that they had some insight. And we've looped them into some other helping around down there when we're moving
Yeah.
big things or during setup, we all went down there and pitched in and unboxed stuff and built furniture and all that kind of stuff. And even since then, now that, when we've moved into the property management space, for others, I've had them kind of helping me look up leads and things like that. So it's been a fun journey for sure. And
Yeah.
obviously they get the side benefit of being able to use it. We've been able to take friends and family groups down there as well and have a good time. So
Yeah, and it's that I think that the lifestyle upgrade is a significant attractor for our kids, right? They're like, man, this is really fun. We have a cabin in the woods, and we've got our beach home, or we got our mountain home, or we've got these vacation homes that we can go use. And they're like, this is really fun. But what we've always tried to do too is like you did, depending on their age and depending on, like, we're not throwing them into the financials and everything else when they're 7, right? But when they're 7, they love vacationing and hanging out at the property. But guess what? They can still move around boxes. They can still come help cut, pick weeds or whatever else that we're doing. And we want them to know that, hey, listen, there's a trade-off for some of this stuff too. We have to put in the work. We have to put in the effort. We have to do certain things so that we can have this toward the end. And I love that, being able to use something that they're interested in to teach some of those lessons. And then as they get older, as my kids started to get older, and they start to understand the economics of it a little bit, and they start to understand underwriting, and they're like, hey, we want to do another one. I say, okay, let's figure out if we can afford another one, and here's how this works, right? You don't just get these properties don't just fall in your lap. And so we have to have enough money for it. We have to have enough time to set them up and all these things. And so they start going through, is like, are we in a position to do this? And if we're not, how do we get in that position? And those are the key mindset things that I think are really fun at a young age for them to try to kind of figure out and try to come. Like I always tell my kids, I'm like, listen, I'll partner with you on it, but you have to come to me with a proposal. Like, you're the partner you want me to partner with you. You got to sell it to me, right? And tell me like the benefits, the risks with it, the benefits of it, and it's been fun to watch them kind of go through that process. And when the younger they are, the more it's just like, hey, let's just buy this one, right? But the older they get, the more they really start to take it serious and say, hey, listen, yeah, this one, I think we can do this one. Here's why I don't think we should do this one. And it's fun to watch. And I love that part of this asset class, especially with younger kids. And even like as they start to become teenagers, and then they're, the late teenagers, early adults, it's just stuff that they, in my opinion, like society is trying to tell that younger generation that they don't have a lot of options. And I tend to disagree strongly with that. But I think it's more of a mindset than the options that are available for them. And I think the mindset and the learning of it is what's being stripped of them. And so then they just don't think they have options. And it's fun to teach them that along the way. And I think I love hearing families and parents that are doing that with this asset class. And we hear it all the time. And that's why I wanted to kind of hang on that point for a minute, because it is something that is very unique about short-term rentals and lifestyle assets.
yeah, the experiential learning, I mean, you hit on it, is huge. I think all my kids, like I said, being hockey players, would love to play in the NHL one day. I'll support that dream as long as it's realistic to them, but at the same
Yeah.
time, I'm going to sprinkle in plenty of, business opportunities and interacting with people on a different level and all those other foundational kind of growth concepts that you want to make sure that they have and develop that they don't even realize you're doing or putting in front of them, and then they're
Yeah.
ready for some of those tougher conversations when whatever the career field is that opens up to them
Yeah.
happens. So
Yep, exactly. And so let's dive into this property. First property, we've identified the market. We talk about, we always say we're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of short-term rental investing, and there's always some challenges and struggles in every deal. And anybody that tells you there's not, you want to run from them. And that means they've never done a deal or they haven't done very many of them, because I don't know that there's any that don't have a few challenges. And so let's talk about some of the challenges and kind of lessons learned going into it. How smooth was the process? What did you guys have to do? Was it any sort of a value add property? Let's talk a little bit about the acquisition side.
yeah, for sure. So like I mentioned, I think we were looking for a specific property that fit a lot of the Vodyssey mindset, something that we could create a premium experience around. And I think we
Mm-hmm.
found some run of the mill cabins a lot in the early part of the acquisition process, and none of them just popped. And then the one that we ended up settling on, it was owned previously by an amateur astronomer, and he had invested in a really cool on-site observatory with a high-powered
Oh,
telescope in it. And so obviously the 35 to $40,000 telescope was not staying when we bought it, but the whole little kind of outbuilding and idea set up. And so we took that and kind of ran with it. And it has a nice removable roof on it. So we went, I think you actually have a property, or did at one point have a property named Stargazer. So we
yeah,
actually went with the same type of theme.
yeah,
And the stars down there are phenomenal. You have hardly any light pollution, and so that theme allowed us to really kind of create that premium experience. The only one that has this on-site observatory on the spot, and so we really felt like we could lean into that premium experience, and that one kind of popped for us right there. Also had, like I said, 11 acres, so there's a fishing pond, there's some trails on site. It's really centrally located to a bunch of the hiking trails that bring a lot of people to the area as it is already. And so that was great. It had never been a short-term rental, but it had been a family home that they were there almost every weekend. It's about an hour drive from their home. And so they took great
yeah,
care of it. It was in great shape. We had to do very little improvements to it. We refurnished pretty much everything. Typical family home. You're
yeah.
okay with some older couches and chairs and things like that, and beds. So we refurnished pretty much everything, but leaned into that opportunity and got it going. Probably in a matter of about 3 months, 2.5, 3 months from the time that we purchased in October of 23. So.
Nice. So launched October of 23. Tell me the seasonality of that market. My guess is October going in. I mean, you got the holidays, but then you're going into a little bit of slow season, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we really took from October to about mid-December to improve, and we wanted to make sure we got it up by Christmas. So we were saying,
Okay.
hey, if we can get a couple holiday stays in there and some good bookings right away at the turn of the year, then that's great. So yeah, it's less seasonal than you might think. Like many of the beach markets are. We get great leaf color foliage changes and things like that in
Yeah.
Ohio, and so October usually ends up being my second best month after July, and so
Yeah.
that kind of helps reduce the amount of shoulder time period as well, and then you start getting the spring breakers in March and April, and so really the shoulder market is kind of November to February.
Yeah.
But during the summer, I mean, we're fully booked, and we've been booked every weekend for 2 years straight. So yeah, it's been good from that perspective. There's a lot of draws to the area. It's
Yeah.
kind of it's just getting away from that big city life. It's getting the family out in nature, hiking a lot, doing some cool things, horseback riding, ATVs,
Yeah,
things like
it's
that.
been a
So
really well performing market for quite a while, and again, it has every element of those backyard kind of destinations that are major metro areas that are pretty close to them. You can get to them, but you can get away from all the hustle and bustle of the metro area, right? In the big suburban areas, like you said, you can get here and you can actually see the stars at night because there's not a lot of light pollution, and those things are pretty fun to be able to just go hang out and then go do stuff during the day and then be able to drive back on the weekends. They become kind of weekend warrior type markets, and then in the summertime you end up having some nicer longer stays. But they really are. Talk to me about, because this is primarily a weekend market. Would you agree?
yeah, we get 4 to 5 day bookings in the summer months for sure
Yeah.
and spring break. But yeah, our primary booking is 2 nights, maybe three, Thursday to Sunday or Friday to Sunday in most instances. So,
Yeah.
yep.
And you started getting into, and I'm gonna go back to that question here in just a minute. But the reason I want to lay the background for everybody of why I'm going to ask you this question about pricing and maximizing on the weekends, and when you're not going to get a whole lot of weekday bookings, is you started really diving into and seeing the opportunity to help people in this market, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It actually started within the first couple months of from acquisition, that October, November, December timeframe. We were putting a lot of time and effort into it. I had a referral for a property manager that wasn't local, but had experience in the space, had experience kind of with the premium model, and so she was helping quite a bit, got us along. But it wasn't long, even right before launch, where I kind of just realized, like, man, this is our single biggest investment going forward, and I'm not confident that she wants this to succeed as much as I do. And so I really just said, hey, I'm gonna try and run with this myself from a property management standpoint. It certainly added some stress right out of the gate, and I think I started looking for some other resources, both within the Vodyssey family of people who had done it themselves, and some other gurus and things like that out there on how to do this the right way, and looking at systems. I know you just recently talked to the OwnerRez CEO. We relied on OwnerRez from a PMS standpoint
Yeah.
very early on, and that was even with one property, that was a game changer for me to being able to just streamline a lot of our connections with guests and finances and all that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, I guess I bet on myself, and I trusted that I could figure it out, and we went after it. And so, to your point, found out that I really actually enjoy the guest engagement piece. I really enjoyed talking to people, building, even if they're short-term relationships with people, hearing about what brought them to the area, hearing about how we could make a premium guest experience for them. And then certainly the highs of getting a 5-star review after each stay helped a lot, and winning in that space. So, yeah, we went with it and continued to do that, and even grown our management portfolio a little bit too, with aspirations to grow even more. So,
Love it, love it. And so, and it, every time I hear of a successful one, you cannot have a successful property, a 1% property, without a 1% management structure in place. And sometimes that's the drawback of some of these smaller markets, especially, but even some of the bigger markets, because you just get inundated with kind of run of the mill big corporate management companies, and they don't really meet our business model of maximizing individual assets. But some of the smaller markets, you just don't have a lot of options, right? And all of a sudden, you run out of options to interview. You run out of options, and when you're talking to them, you're like, man, I don't know if this is going to work out. So I have to think about doing this on my own. And then you start doing it, and I do agree with you on the front end. It can be a lot more work and a lot more stress, because you're learning new systems, you're learning new processes, you're onboarding like the software tools like the OwnerRez. But then you start to realize how the game is played, and you start to realize, man, I kind of like this. Well, you're in a market that doesn't have a lot of options, and you can become a really good option for a lot of people, including some of our Vodyssey members. And all of a sudden, one thing leads to another, and you start looking at this as like, man, this is I got this little side hustle starting to turn into a business, right?
yeah, absolutely. It's been a labor of love for sure. I think I certainly burnt the midnight oil many times. We really started doing the property management piece for others earnestly at the start of this year, I think, and we're up to about 5 clients right now in and around Ohio, a couple in the Hocking Hills market, but also a couple here in Northeast Ohio. And I think one of the best decisions I did was bring on a business partner to help me through this. And I'm just kind of I'm an outgoing extroverted guy, and I just realized I did not want to do this by myself and
Yeah.
be, it didn't matter to me necessarily the revenue split or anything like that. I was much more interested in, going on the journey with someone else that had a passion for it and figuring it out. So yeah, so my business partner AJ and I started going after this full term in April, and it's been like you said, ups and downs, but a good journey since then. And like go back to the statement we said about being part of your clientele. Like I think being an owner has given us such a unique perspective on
Yeah.
what other owners are looking for and what's important to them. And I can almost look at every single property that we manage and say, am I making the best decision of what I would want to make if it were my property?
Yeah.
And I don't know that a lot of those big box property management companies do that, or even maybe some of the small box ones if they're not in it for for those right reasons. So I think that's given us really good kind of true north as we've built this from the ground up. So
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, I get asked that a lot. One, what are we looking for in a management partner? And one is alignment, right? And that's why I don't like the big companies, like the ones that have 50, 100 properties or more. It's really hard to be in alignment because their business model, it's very difficult to try to maximize each individual asset when you get that many of them. And as owners, we're trying to maximize individual assets. So we have to be in alignment with what we're trying to do in the first place, which is why I lean toward the smaller boutique companies. And because when you have a smaller portfolio, you're kind of forced to maximize individual assets or you're not going to make any money. And then the second thing, because a lot of people come to me and they say, I found this management partner and they sound really good. They check all the boxes, but they have 3 properties in the market. And I don't know because now I'm going to be competing with them. I said, man, that's one of the next things I look for is I want a property manager that actually owns properties because they're going to understand the perspective of an owner. And I think it's it's really a great thing in my opinion. And a lot of people look at it as a detriment sometimes, because they think, oh, they're competing with me. And that's not the case. They're going to have the same perspective you are. When you can raise the bar together, the market gets better. You all make more money, and so it's one of those things that a lot of people don't realize. You think you're going to be competing or leaving money on the table, but if you can have a group of 8 or 10 properties or 15 properties or even more, it can be a huge number of properties and everybody's doing a better job. Well, guess what? The consumer starts spending more money and everybody makes more money. And so it's really nice to not be the only person in a game that is trying to raise the bar.
yeah, that's a good point. And I think you even talk about it when you look at your underwriting. You get a lot of people that get worried about, is this market slowing down or anything like that? And the markets that we're in, 9 times out of 10, you look at the numbers and there's significant growth. There's plenty to go around if you do it the right way. And
Oh yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
you've caveated our unfair share of business, right? And that's
Yeah.
what we're looking for. There's plenty of people who are not doing it right, that if you take that premium experience and capitalize on it and really create a memorable vacation for people, like they're going to keep coming back and the market is going to be there, whether they're you would look at them as quote competitive assets or not. There's plenty to go around.
Yeah.
Plenty.
I mean, each asset has such limited inventory. We have 30 days a month, right? In a
Yeah.
weekend market, you're really dealing with 8 to 12 days every single month that you're really trying to capitalize on. And so it's, because the inventory is so limited, also the consumer demand is still pretty dang high, right? There is a lot more supply in every one of these markets, but the demand is not spread equally across the supply. And that's what's so evident right now. And the consumer is begging us for a reason to pay us more money and pick our property. And it's really fun in these markets when you dial that in, because like you said, we're aiming to get that unfair share of business, because we're doing the things it takes to get the consumer to say, yeah, I want your stuff above and beyond everybody else's. And so I want to go back to something that I think a lot of people think about right now, especially as we go into shoulder seasons and we go into kind of our winter time after the holiday rush is done, is, and feel free to poke holes in this. You can always disagree with me on my podcast, but I feel very strongly that you make and maximize revenue by figuring out how to make the most amount of money when the guest is wanting to spend money. In other words, we don't maximize our properties by trying to fill the shoulder season and the weekdays in the shoulder season. We really maximize our revenue by saying, hey, listen, I know they're coming every weekend, so I need to figure out how to get them to spend the most amount of money on the weekend with me. And because they're probably not coming on a Tuesday in the middle of the week, right? And so where a lot of people are going to talk about it and say, no, you got to figure out how to get some of that business in during the week. Great, fill the holes a little bit, but a lot of times you're just giving that stuff away. where you're really going to maximize, and it happens to be weekend markets, and it happens to be any major market during your peak season. And so I always say during the slow season, think about what you need to do to set yourself up for the next peak season so that you can really maximize your revenue when the consumer is spending the money. I think it's way easier to go get and make extra money when the consumer is there spending it. And instead of focusing on how do I fill all the Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I always say to people, how can we go from $300 a night to $350 or $400 a night on your weekends, right? And I'm curious, now that you're operating your own property, managing your own property, but also now seeing other properties and maximizing these other properties, what are your thoughts on that when it comes to revenue management and trying to maximize revenue? And how important is it to maximize during the peak when the consumer's spending it, or trying to pick up your kind of share of business when it's a little bit slower?
Yeah, it's really good points, and I'm not going to disagree with you. I think you're spot on. I think to me it comes down to influence. What can we influence the most? Are we going to influence the entire market or people coming to this market to, like you said, show up on a Tuesday in a non-peak season? That's lifestyles and
Yep.
culture. You cannot compete with that type of stuff. But what you can do is take advantage of the folks that are coming from an experience standpoint and create something that really they're excited about. And like you said, create something premium from that they can do year round. I just had a potential guest inquire the other day and say, hey, kids want to know if they can still fish in the winter. And I said, as long as it's not frozen over, you can fish. So even
Yeah.
even in that, some of our assets and features of our properties are, standing out in the market
Yeah.
when others might not be. And
Yeah.
so we always look at shoulder season too, as that should really be your improvement season. So
Yes.
if we've got
Yep.
stuff going on around the property, if you need trees taken care of, if you're adding a barrel sauna, if you're doing anything like that from a feature standpoint or just general improvement to the experience, the best time to do it is now, or especially early, because then, in my opinion, you can start promoting it and marketing it in your listings. Because a lot of our listings, our standard book time is about 30 to 40 days out. So if we're talking about mid-January, people are even probably thinking about potentially Valentine's Day at some point, these couples that are looking for that type of thing. So we're
Yeah.
not far from that. So thinking about different things that we can do from there. And so, I think just being ahead and thinking proactively and not trying to get stuck in the reactive nature of
100%.
things. Now there's definitely some times where you're like, man, this weekend's not booked yet. And is it going to book? What's going on a couple days out, and I think almost always it holds true. If you're doing the right thing, it's going to work out. And so it's a
Yep.
little bit stressful sometimes. But if you're doing the right things, that you got to trust the process and know that it's going to happen. So.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, especially in drivable kind of backyard resort, like destinations that are more weekend markets. They're like, especially in the shoulder season. I mean, you can book a weekend on a Thursday and a Friday, right? I mean, your weekend's not booked, and a lot of times it will get booked on a Thursday or Friday because they're coming from the city and they're talking, they're having dinner on Thursday night and they're like, hey, maybe we'll go to the mountains, maybe
Yep.
we'll go to the beach, maybe we'll go up to, the resort and wherever for the weekend, right? And they're just coming for the weekend. It happens a lot in these types of markets. And I think a lot of people leave a lot of money on the table because you have these blanket statements of let's reduce our prices when we're 14 days out. Let's reduce our prices when we're a week out. And you start to take these discounts and you don't realize, well, the nature of the market is there's still a lot of people who come in and make that decision within days of showing up, especially in kind of weekend warrior type markets.
And to be honest, back to the tools, we talked about the property management system earlier. There's so many good dynamic pricing tools
Yeah.
out there. We've invested in that and integrated that as well. And that actually gives me a lot of peace of mind as a manager too, that I know in the background, my pricing tool is dynamically moving things around to get me the best opportunities around, who's coming into the market. So yeah, I'm certain that we're dropping price a little bit to make it potentially more attractive and not leave it empty. But at the same time, it's built around the confidence of what the rest of the market is doing and what
Right.
the rest of the market's seeing and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, trust the process.
Love it. Love it. Awesome, man. Well, tell me what's next. What's the big what's on the horizon? I mean, we're at the end of 2025. Everybody's thinking about what 2026 looks like. So let's hear it for you guys. What do
Yeah.
you what's next on the horizon?
Yeah, no, great questions. I think we took a little bit of a leap into away from like a single family home and looked at a apartment complex that we're trying up in the Cleveland area. So we're going to try kind
Hmm.
of the urban market as well. It's a little bit closer to home for us, so we can maybe respond a little bit quicker if needed. So we're going to try that and see how that works out. But I think ultimately we just really want to grow our footprint in and around Hocking Hills. I think
Yeah.
there's a couple bigger property management companies that, although they're not the big box, they're still sufficiently large that doesn't enable them to give that boutique experience. So we really
Yeah.
want to kind of show people what that boutique experience can look and feel like with what our company Top Shelf Experiences is trying to do. So we're going to try and grow that. And then I think as a business, AJ and I have said our goal really would be to, as the revenue comes in, as the business grows, we want to buy our own properties in different markets and get an
Hmm.
initial foothold in some of those other markets, learn those markets on our own properties personally, just like we did with Stargazer Hocking Hills, and then potentially look at expanding in those other areas. So
Love it.
yeah, some cool stuff there, I think, and we'll see where it takes us. But
Yeah.
it's a grind. I think maybe one of the things I would say is just that I've learned is just keep taking that next best step forward
Yeah.
and make the next best decision. Right, the indecision is only paralyzing and handcuffing. Even if it's not the right decision, you're going to learn so much from that decision that
Yeah.
you made on what to do or what not to do. And so I think that's what we're trying to do, is just make the next best decision. So
Love it. And you build that muscle of taking action, right? I mean, the
mhm.
worst habit to get, I always say the most expensive thing you could do is getting comfortable sitting on the sidelines, building that habit of saying, I'm not taking action anymore. I'm just getting comfortable. I'm sitting here. I'm waiting. I'm not doing anything. And so, like you said, make a decision, move forward, good, bad, or ugly. You're building that muscle of saying, hey, listen, worst case scenario, you learn a whole bunch of stuff, and that sometimes is the best case scenario. And then what if it works out? Best case scenario, you're leaps and bounds ahead of what you were trying to do. And so it's take that action. I think is a really good point. I always end that way, with saying, hey, listen, what are some of the, like, if you had to go back to your younger self, and you can either kind of end on that or like add something to it. But if you had to give yourself some of that extra advice, what would it be?
Yeah, I think it's that probably. I mentioned this earlier too, though. Take some bets and chances on yourself too. I
Yeah.
mean, no one knows you better than you, and
Yeah.
so I know the commitment I'm willing to give and the drive that I have, and so I'd rather bet on myself and my ability to learn and adapt and figure things out, even if I don't know it, than anyone else. So I think that's kind of been a good driver for us to keep us moving in the right direction. And again, bumps along the way, no question, where you say, "Oh man, I probably won't do that again." I think
Yeah.
you've mentioned previously that setup is maybe one of your least favorite phases, and I
Yeah.
think AJ and I would agree with that. And
Yeah.
it wasn't that long ago where we were putting things together and said, "Man, I don't know if I'll do that again." So
Right. Right.
just making the next best decision and trying new things. So
Love it. Love it. Well, listen, I couldn't agree more. Like we always say, nobody's coming to save us. Bet on yourself, right? It's up to you. It's that personal responsibility, self-reliance, that at the end of the day, we got to look in the mirror and say, man, did I make this happen? Or, whose responsibility is it? It's going to be the person looking back at you in that mirror. And so I love that. Bet on yourself, because nobody's going to do it for you. And so I love ending on that. Joel, we're going to show people and point them toward, if you're anybody interested in the Hocking Hills area, go check out Top Shelf Experiences, right? Is that the Top Shelf
the
Hocking
website.
Hills is the website. So we'll link this. I was just trying to read that. My eyes are not good enough to see my screen of the web address. Top Shelf Hocking Hills, right?
Yep. And we have a sister site called Top Shelf STR, which is a little bit broader in and around the Ohio market, and just supporting people people through that. So yeah, that'd be the place to go and connect with us.
Love it.
If you need help and guidance on co-hosting or hosting or anything like that, or I'd love to talk to veterans too that maybe in your audience are interested in getting into the space if they have any insights. There's so many great benefits that the government provides to us as veterans to help kind of launch some of these things and do that type of thing. So I'd love to help people through that
Love it.
process as well if they're interested.
Awesome. We'll put all the links in the show notes, including your property links, so that you guys can find Joel, reach out, start those conversations. And I know that you'd be in really good hands, especially in that market in particular. But in general, like you said, those veterans and just knowing what resources are available. Sometimes you just don't know, right? You're like, hey, listen, I need to talk to somebody that's done this because I'm not really quite sure what kind of resources I have available. So absolutely reach out. Those of you listening, we know how valuable your time is, and we appreciate you spending with us. Joel, I appreciate you for allowing people to listen in on these conversations. I know these are our favorite episodes because we get so much feedback on it, and so I love them. They're my favorite episodes by far and away. They're my favorite conversations, and so it's always very much appreciated that you allow us to have this in public and let other people listen in, and then I'll also offer some help. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Sean.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, we'll wrap it up today. You guys know I ask you a couple favors at the end of every episode because we don't run any ads on this show at all. We don't have any sponsorships. We haven't taken any and don't intend to take any. I mean, that means we can talk about what we want to talk about and promote what we want to promote, right? And so the only way that this show grows, though, is organically, if you guys share it. Our goal is to help people walk into this game with their eyes wide open. If you're finding that that's helpful for you and you know somebody else that would be helpful for, it would be very much appreciated for you to share the show. If you don't have anybody to share it with, like it or review it on whatever platform you're watching or listening on, and then those big algorithms on those platforms will share it with other people like you. And so those things are all helpful for us. And the final, most important thing that I ask you at the end of every episode is pick that one thing you can do today to start building that life you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. Share this with other people you think need to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Hey Grace, is there a website?
Yes! For more amazing content and expert advice, visit Vodyssey.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.